Zoom meeting. Hope we get some more people showing up. Before we get scheduled with the scheduled topics, this last Tuesday, I'm not teaching regularly anymore. I happened to be there at the dojo last Tuesday. About 5 minutes before class, a girl comes running in to the community room. She says, we're not sure whether she said I've been raped or he's trying to rape me. The guy that was chasing her got to the door, saw us, took off running. I called 911 while a couple of the other black belts tried to give the girl some comfort or security. I eventually turned the phone over to the girl because I figured the 911 operator would prefer to talk with her rather than me. Two officers and an ambulance showed up within 5 minutes. They caught the guy about 10 minutes later.
Wow.
She really wasn't hurt, but there are a couple of things that grew out of that. One, she had met the guy. They were both 17. There was a press release on it. They were both 17. They met on social media. They agreed to meet at the park. And so, I guess one thing is that, and that the park at night does not have very many people in it. It's a generally, I would classify it as a dark park. So you might want to warn your kids. Kids are going to be on social media. There's not really too much you can do to stop it. But they can use good judgment, and if they're going to meet somebody, number one, they need to meet them in a place that is well lit and has lots of people. That was number one. Secondly, hopefully the person who is now teaching the class, the girl had her head on straight when she ran into the room that was lit, into the building that was lit. So she ran to some place where she thought she could get some safety. So one of the things we're looking at is keeping the door to the dojo open while we're there. So if anyone else, if something like this happens again, someplace, it's the only building in the whole park. It's a big park. So there's someplace safe they can go to because they'll know there's someone there. And that's about it. I did not spend any time talking with the girl. I know from experience that, when a person's really upset and excited, I don't want to say they're irrational, but they're irrational. So I did, what she said, I took her word for it and called 911. I think there's a hesitancy on people to do that sort of thing. I've called 911 numerous times. I'm not afraid to do so. Had to do it once. Well, this is back in the 1980s when I was teaching before cell phones, etc. We had a drunk walk into the class, and he wanted to fight us. And I and one other black belt, we did not say, you don't threaten people. That's absolutely a no-no. You need to have some sort of a code signal. So we had one because the building did not have a phone. So I gave, a code hand motion to one of our black belts. They left the dojo, went about 200 yards to the main building, called the police. They were there in a couple of minutes. But you have to have a way that if you have someone who comes into the class that's going to be disruptive or you feel is a threat, you have to have a way where, one of your black belts will know they need to surreptitiously leave with a cell phone and call 911. because your main responsibility is to protect your students. What else did we learn from the experience? I think that's about it. But I don't know the condition of the girl. I know she did not need the ambulance. And the police talked with her for about 20 minutes or so. And during that time, they caught the boy. And hopefully she's had a, I won't say a positive learning experience, but, a learning experience that she can walk away from. And that's what's important. Which brings up another thing. If you do have a student who's had a traumatic experience, and this is, if you're the sensei, you're also like their mother, their psychiatrist, their priest, whatever you want to call it. You have to be willing to lend an ear and let them talk, and without making value judgments as to what they did or what they said. Because most of the time, I found that if you let people talk, they can come up with their own solutions, and they're usually pretty good solutions. And that's a credit to the person. But it's a process, and if you have to let them do it. It's kind of like, to some extent, PTSD. The person needs support, and you have to be willing to listen without offering advice. That's the hard part. So, I just wanted to get that off my chest because, I hope she's okay, and I hope she's learned from the experience. But
See, George just hats off to her because she read and didn't just freeze up and let happen whatever was going to happen.
yeah, I mean, she was, it was good. It was good that she ran into the building. First thing she says, he's chasing me. I've been raped. We weren't sure what he said, whether I've been raped or he's trying to rape me. But she had she had the presence of mind to tell us exactly what was going on when she came in.
Yeah.
So that's a good sign. I mean, I don't know if it's a good sign, but it's
No, the fact that she had she was in the mental frame of mind that she didn't go to a dark place, that she did go to a lighted place.
right.
You might get a new student out of it. You never know. That would be a positive. Yeah. So
we get to a lit place, she'd actually have to cross a really busy street, and that. But anyway.
Yep.
So, Dave, I guess you'll pick up on this when you see the finished video.
I've got myself two places on there because I wasn't coming on my computer. So you got two Dave Clarks up there.
I got two Dave Clarks.
That's bad enough having one.
So Dave Clark 2 instead of the Dave Clark 5. So yeah.
Let me
get myself out of there.
Let me see what I can do with this one. Oh, there you go.
There you go.
Now there's only one of you.
There you go. That's
okay. So there's Ernest is still with us, yeah. Where is Est? Okay, Ernie, Ernest, we have no video and audio from you right now. But anyway, just very briefly, Dave, we had a girl who ran into the class before class Tuesday. Some guy was chasing her. He had either raped her or was trying to rape her. And she's okay. And he's under arrest. So
when did they catch him?
Where did they take him?
No, when did they catch him? Was it the same?
They apparently, I found it from the news article because apparently they set up a perimeter real fast because they had a good description of what he was wearing, height, age, etc. had a good
Right.
description of him from the girl, and they set up a perimeter, and they had him within 15 minutes.
Excellent. Excellent.
So, which is, I mean, we jokingly say at Santa Clarita, there's at least one police officer and or one fireman living on every block, which is why we have a low crime rate. But also the city is willing to pay the county for really adequate police protection. And you call 911 here, you've got help within 2 or 3 minutes,
That's excellent.
and that's worth paying for.
When you need it, nothing else will do.
Pardon?
When you need it, nothing else will do.
Right. Okay, so let's get to our topics today. We're down to 3 now.
He's coming back. He put on the chat that he lost audio and he's going to jump back on, George.
Okay.
Good.
Get rid of this here. Okay, in any event, let me see what the chat says. Okay. First topic is, when the martial arts were secret, they were intended to defend against known fighting methods of the time. Obviously, the average person was not aware of martial arts techniques, so he defended against untrained attacks. Now that nearly every person is well aware of the martial arts techniques, simply through movies and the media, if not through direct practice to some degree. How has that affected the martial arts? Does it affect defense scenarios? Has a popularization been beneficial, detrimental, or a bit of both? Has it changed what you teach compared to what you were taught? Okay, so does anybody want to initiate their thoughts on this, or?
I'll be glad to jump in.
Sure.
And I know everybody's got an opinion. You know, I started out with Bill Fromm when I was 13 at the Towson YMCA here in Baltimore. And that was in the early 70s or early mid 70s. And, you know, I think at the time for me, it was all about self-defense. I was a little kid getting picked on. Yeah, Bruce Lee had jumped on the scene and things like that. But at the time, I mean, people, when they found out that I was doing it, they thought it was magic. You know, they might as well be a magician, like, oh my God, you know, that kind of thing. Like, where'd you figure that out, kind of deal. And if I was to jump forward to now with the advent of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Krav Maga, and things like that, I guess the part that kind of disturbs me is it's been watered down. You know, we went to class, we learned a technique, we worked on, you know, teacher would come in, we'd warm up, we'd work on the technique, and we'd work on it until we got it right. And then we'd go to the next class. And of course, we'd have a whole series with Bill where we're doing rolls. He'd put the metal chair in the middle of the mat, you know, and everybody, God, they dreaded that. You have to, you're flying over the chair and, the whole deal. So it was, I just kind of felt like that really prepared you, that repetition, that practice, the doing. George, I remember during COVID, you were like, well, okay, COVID's here. How can you work out alone, by yourself? And you found a post and you you tied your belt to it and, rolling into a throw and, those kinds of things. And I think that we've gotten away from the doing. When I talk to people, they're like, oh, you're Brian Gately. I heard you're that martial arts guy, blah, 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 blah. Oh, I'm in Krav Maga. And I'm like, oh, great. So you how long? Oh, it was like 5 years ago. And I was like, oh, 5 years ago? Like, are you still practicing? Oh, no, I took it 3 or 4 times. I'm good. And I thought, and, here's me giving everybody a lecture. I'm like, it doesn't work that way. And I'll use a golf analogy. You show me a professional golfer that walks away from golf for 3 years. you think that person is going to go right into a tournament and shoot 5 under par? I think that we've lost the repetition. I think that, and maybe because I'm older now, but I think we've kind of lost the art of the art. I love the term martial arts because everybody's body's different. Everybody's going to approach things in a different way, but you've got to get form into the picture. You've got to get discipline, and you've got to get repetition. And I think that those things have, I feel like they've kind of gone by the wayside. And like the more people I talk to about it, oh yeah, I did that 20 years ago, or you still do it? Yeah, because I love it. I mean, I'm still curious about it. And so that's been my observation. Maybe that's a little bit of my ego talking, but for what it's worth. So
yeah, it has changed. We still do a lot of repetition. I mean, it's, to me, I think in any sport, has to be repetition, because that's the only way you build your skill level to where it's automatic.
Yep.
And once it's automatic, it just gets better with more practice. I kind of say, sometimes people say, why do we have to do this so often? I said, how many steps did you have to take until you learned how to walk? And how many times did you fall on your face? Sometimes they get the concept. When I was in class at Tuesday, we had 2 boys that came back. They'd been gone for a couple of weeks. They were new students. And the mother apologized. She says, we just, we didn't realize we had other things going on Tuesday night, so we had to do, but we've cleared that up. And I said, I apologize, because I sent, if there are kids that show up for a couple of weeks and they're gone for a couple of weeks, I'll send the parent an email and say, are they okay, yada yada yada. But it's also this is something new and completely different that they're doing. They may feel totally awkward, but if you can get them back here for 3 or 4 more weeks, things will start to come together and it'll make sense to them. And she appreciated the email. I said, share this with your sons. I said, I taught this in junior high for 6 or 8 years. And I said, I said, first 2 or 3, well, there was jujitsu 5 days a week, but there it was, but I said, give them some time, and they just have to be patient with themselves. Kids, I said, young people like immediate gratification. And I said, but if you just say, be patient, you will get, it will work out. And so she shared that with her sons, and I hope they'll be back next week. But yeah, it is you as a sensei, you kind of have to, I know it's not a correct term, you have to mother some students along a little bit more.
yes.
So that they're willing to stick around.
Sensei, following up from some of what we uncovered last week, and in so many ways, martial arts have become partial arts. And in judo, you've got all these prohibited actions you're not allowed to do. You can count out 10 of them. Very specific. Something as simple as you're not allowed to grab underneath an opponent's clothing at the ankles or at the gi. In Aikido, you've got a number of things that are not allowed. In Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, no striking is allowed when you're ground grappling. So they say, well, MMA, they combine mixed martial arts. Yeah, but there's a page and a half of rules of things you're not allowed to do. So those are the page and a half is front and center in my classes, where students would These are things I want you to know how to do on the street. So rather than partial arts, the whole concept of find the most comprehensive form of training out there. And hey, guess what traditional Japanese jiu-jitsu offers?
Yeah.
I was talking earlier this week with Darren regarding Krav Maga, and I said I give Krav Maga credit for setting up scenarios that I hadn't considered previously, and he says that's true, but he says just so you know, Krav Maga is jiu-jitsu. So I have to agree.
Yeah, there are. How do you say? I've got an editorial on the future of Kokoro dealing with street versus, how do you say, fighting versus self-defense. And what it comes down to basically is self-defense, which jujitsu is basically there are no rules. You do whatever you have to. I mean, I have no qualms about teaching my students, how to rip lips, ears, how to do, what is this? One of the stupidest attacks that works really well is to stick your finger in your opponent's ear and turn it. And you can do the same thing up their nose. I mean, up their nose, they'll get a bloody nose out of it, but in their ear, it's just excruciatingly annoying. And some of this stuff is just, you have to be willing to teach it and assume that the student is going to use good judgment in its use. One of the submission techniques I learned from, I can't think of his last name now, Pierre, he's actually in France. If you're doing a person's down on the ground and you're holding their wrist and you're turning their arm, is you stick your heel in their armpit and vibrate it.
Oh, wow. Okay.
The person will crack up laughing.
That's hysterical.
And you can't say that, no one can say you're hurting him because you're laughing at him, but that's just a nervous reaction to all that vibration in the armpit.
Oh, yeah.
But you don't have to, we're not under any restrictions, whereas, as Dave said, most martial arts are, in terms of what you can and cannot do. And so that's all that students are taught, is what they can do. And our definition of can do is a bit more liberal than judo, aikido, Krav Maga, MMA,
Sensei, I think it's ridiculous that those limitations are in place from a self-defense standpoint. I get the whole fighting thing. I mean, in boxing, you're not allowed to kick. So but yet boxing is I have great respect for what you learn in footwork, and a good boxer is probably the last person I'd want to meet.
Agreed. Yes.
Situation.
Yes.
And yet, what they're studying is partial. So it's not like we're all high and mighty. It's just that by offering a comprehensive curriculum, you're doing your self-defense students a great favor. One of our previous classes, we had us all cracked up because we were talking about biting or shark bites, and somebody piped up with the term chujitsu.
What?
Anyways, it's kind of frustrating because last meeting I alluded to the same thing happening in other disciplines, and a lot of other art forms where students are taught minimally instead of maximally. And as a teacher, I find that frustrating.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a problem because I lost my train of thought here.
Sensei, the caboose is in back and the engine's in front.
Yeah, it's a problem because you have all these other arts are taking a part of jujitsu or part of something, because it's easier to teach a part than it is to teach the whole.
Yes.
And so, it's easier to specialize, and many of them have really good self-defense techniques if they could get away from the rules. And a lot of it comes down to, I don't think it's the art itself as how the art is practiced in the dojo. Everything we teach, it, and I'm sure is built on, is against street attacks. You don't
Yes.
you in Krav Maga, you have people that people that are resistant or what have you, and use Krav Maga, and they need to have practice, as I've said this many times before, in actually reacting to random unplanned attacks, because it's that first second or two that determines whether they'll survive or not. I
Yeah.
use
You use the term,
deer in the headlight time.
Yeah.
And that's separate from teaching any martial art. And if you teach that, then students will have a better chance of survival on the street, which is what our prime purpose is, versus MMA, where it's okay, you want to win a match or win a trophy or win a belt, and that's not our orientation. So
it's interesting you say that. Chuck Liddell, the MMA fighter, when he became very big in MMA, was talking one day I think I saw it on a YouTube video, and I found it very interesting. He said when anyone ever came up to talk to him, he would stand a certain way and he'd put his chin up and away from them, because he got cold cocked so many times. And like you're talking about, it's that catastrophic, immediate, attack that we're defending against, right? That somebody's looking to take you out, and I also wanted to touch on too, it's so interesting, when I explain Japanese jujitsu to people, I'm like, look, it's old school. And I break it down to, as you have, of course, in the manual, Aikido, Judo, and Karate. And I said, they're like, well, which one of those do you do? We do all of them. We were the parent art, and these sprang from that. And they're going like, that sounds like a lot of work.
yeah.
I said, it is. But I think, and maybe this is just like you were talking about. I just think it's the most complete quiver of arrows to have for somebody out on the street that's getting attacked.
Right.
I firmly believe that. So that gives me a lot of intent, in my life as far as my teaching goes. So
what I tell my students, that the chief advantage of jiu-jitsu is that you become unpredictable.
Beautiful. Yeah, exactly.
I love that.
If you're unpredictable, not only do you not know what you're going to do, but your attacker has no idea what you're going to do. And that's your advantage. And the other thing is, once students get their core techniques down, whether it be hits or joint locks or whatever else, they can even be on the ground, and those techniques will work even better on the ground because you have more leverage if you're underneath, so to speak. There are a lot of martial arts that once you're on the ground, if you have a karate person on the ground, they're really stuck.
Yeah.
Because they can't move their body, their torso, excuse me.
Yeah.
Or it's very difficult for them to do so.
Brian, you mentioned earlier the word curiosity, and one of the things is traditional Japanese jiu-jitsu not just makes a student of self-defense very unpredictable on the street, but in the dojo, there's a lot more room for curiosity when you have something that's got a comprehensive approach. And that curiosity, I find, generates want to. Students want to, because, if we have, well, these are a list of things we don't study, my immediately, it's a contrarian in me probably saying, hey, well, I want to know more about that stuff I'm not supposed to do. Why isn't it in here? What's going on? Why don't you let me play piano by ear? Why don't you let me play piano using chord symbols? Why do I have to read notes? Why don't you let me bite? Why am I not allowed to kick? And on and on. The whole curiosity thing is a beautiful word, Brian. I compliment you for using that, because it definitely promotes enthusiasm and want to in a dojo setting.
I think it's look, it's a lifetime. They talk about lifetime sports. This is a lifetime sport, and I was very lucky. And George knows my story. How I was, really pulled back into this 15 years ago by a friend of mine that said, you owe it to the art to start teaching with me. And that's how we started the school. I thought I was doing a demonstration. Next thing I know, it's 15 years later, I'm still active. So, no, but I find, and I tell the kids this too, and I tell my adult students, I'm like, look, don't be afraid to cross train. And really, the thing is, when John put the program together, and it was really he and I, there were 4 other teachers, and they were in 4 different arts. And so we all cross-trained together. And I learned so much in that period of time, because I would tap them on the shoulder and say, so one of our guys was 4th dan in Hapkido. You're talking about dirty fighting. I mean, Hapkido is like, he taught me some vicious stuff. And, and that's where I think the curiosity comes in. And, I'm just like you guys are. It's like, I find myself moving my feet in circular motions while I'm standing at my desk. Or I'm in a restaurant, or, whatever it happens to be. And I tell my students that, I'm like, don't be afraid to keep your feet on the floor in a circular motion, in case something does happen. It could be just someone bumping into you. You're not going to go down, and so thank you for that. But yeah, I wanted to share that. I think and maybe I'm bringing something up new in this conversation, but I think huge advantage to cross training with somebody. You teach them, they teach you, you both come out even, just way more whole and way more complete is probably the best word. So
Right.
Absolutely.
I think what happens is, because jujitsu is your kind of like your core martial art, that whatever else a student brings into the dojo, you can incorporate that into jujitsu. And once they see that opens a whole new door for them. One thing I'll do with students is I usually have to do this more with newer students. They'll go into a technique, and they'll somehow get into it backwards or what have you, and they'll say, I can't do this. And I'll say, yes, you can. But I said, here's a learning opportunity. I said, do what you did. And they'll go into it backwards. I said, okay, keep on going. And they do. And eventually they end up with a legitimate jujitsu technique. And they remember that. There's a, how do you say, an old adage, you learn more from your failures and making mistakes than you do from doing things right.
absolutely. Yeah.
And I'm a firm believer in that. when I taught junior high and even high school, if a student got a lousy grade on an assignment, I'd say, would you, my policy was if you'd like a higher grade, fix it and I'll regrade it. And they eventually learned to do things right the first time, but but you have to give. I think you have to work, students bringing stuff from other arts, etc. Yeah, there are times when you can say, no, we aren't going to do that in here. But there are other times where you have to say, okay, let's see how this works. And let's see how it fits into jujitsu or whatever we happen to be teaching that night. And not only are you showing respect for the student, but they're also seeing that, you're respecting the art and, you're open-minded. And that takes us back to, how do you say, secret techniques, which was the topic here. There are some, it still exists today. I'm going to teach you a secret technique. If you show this to anyone else, your left ear will fall off. And there are senseis that will do this, and and they say this is a secret technique in our system. Decades ago, I had a group of students that went into a freestyle kata tournament with another organization, and they had 3 mats going at the same time. And in the green belt beginner division, one of the attacks was a front choke, and so the student came in with a strike that would normally go for the larynx, but it went right past. He did it full force with a really loud ki that scared the God knows what out of his uke. And the mat referee says, "Mate." Stops the match. Then he goes over to gets the other judges from the other 2 mats referees. It stops the entire tournament. And they start talking amongst themselves, and they come to me and say, "Where did he learn that technique?" And I said, "Well, we teach that to our white belts." He says, "Well, that's a secret technique in our system. We teach it only to our black belts." And they kind of looked at me like, "What am I supposed to do about this?" I said, "I guess it's not a secret anymore." And there are systems that do have what they call secret techniques. I think sometimes senseis do this to create a mystique about, higher belts. You will learn this at a higher belt. If you bring students together from even from different systems of jujitsu, once they get past their terminology problems, it's amazing what they learn from each other. I use the term cross-pollination. They'll learn things that are not, quote unquote, that you would normally not teach them at that belt rank, but they learn it anyway because they think this is really cool.
Yeah.
And there's not much you can do about that. Even if you have students of 2 different ranks working out together, the higher rank will teach the lower rank certain things that maybe he didn't know that you as a sensei didn't present. And that's just, students helping each other learn.
Yeah.
Sensei, getting back to the original question, the original concept, there's any number of students who are far from being naturals. They can study for 1.5 years, 2 years, and they still are they're very challenged by any number of techniques. They have spatial skill issues. They have other things going on. So just the fact that people have seen techniques, studied techniques, and so forth, doesn't mean that they're going to be any kind of adept at those techniques. And as a teacher, you help those students along, but there are my experience is there's far more people who are not naturals. Every so often you get an Antonio Ramon. Remember him?
Yes.
From many years back. At purple belt, he was competing very effectively with black belts and was within a few thousandth of a point of winning a tournament back when those tournaments were being taking place. And Antonio Ramon was a prime example of a natural. You could show him one thing and he'd draw 10 correct conclusions. But those are the exception, not the rule. So the fact that people have been exposed to techniques and movies and or even studied doesn't mean that they're going to be able to use them effectively on the street.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. There are techniques that I teach and variations that I think, from my perspective, are absolutely worthless. And yet a student will pick up on it, and it's like they discovered a magic wand or something. It's amazing. How do you say it's there? I mean, that's why you have ideally you want to teach everything you have learned, because you may not think it's a worthwhile technique or way of doing a technique, but if, as Dave says, if it works for that one student, your lesson has been a success. And yes, there are students that it's an uphill battle for them all the way, but eventually, and again, it goes back to one of the advantages and disadvantages of jiu-jitsu, because we teach so many different things, they will eventually hopefully find one or two things that work for them. Yeah, they can pass a test, hunky-dory. They can pass a belt test, which is nice, but they may also have, say there are 15 or 20 techniques on a belt test. If they can do one or two of those things for almost any type of attack, they're okay and you're okay. And that's the key. I've never found a student who is totally incompetent. Eventually they find something that works.
Yeah.
And that's the hard part of being a sensei is being patient to that point where they, oh my God, he finally learned something. He knows how to do a hand throw.
Well, exactly. And they asked me, I had a kid ask me one day, is like, why do we always start with that hand throw thing? And I'm like, well, which one? Tainagi or Tewaza? Like, what do you want to talk? And I'm trying to, and I'm like, you know why? Because guess what? This is probably one of the simplest things you can do. And it's one of the most basic things that you can do. It employs the circular motion. And until you get this right, it's like building a foundation and building your way up.
Yeah.
I agree with you totally. And then it could be like they don't get that, but they do something.
Yeah,
You're absolutely shocked when they do something else, and you're like, really? Same person, right? Okay.
Yeah.
So.
It's amazing. It may take it 2 or 3 or 4 belts before a student, you realize a student, my God, this student has learned something and they can do it. And yes, there are occasionally students that are naturals, and they move along and frustrate everybody else. Yeah.
And another thing those students can know is that the hand throw and the Takubi Shimiwaza, the Tainagi and the Takubi Shimiwaza can be mixed and matched with other techniques. So as they move up, that's going to become an integral part of their growth, their multiple technique flow. And so learn it well independently so that when it comes time to combine, you can go straight into it. Or go straight from it into another technique.
Right. One of the things that frustrated a lot of my students one night was we were doing the hand throw. Okay, and you set it up and you pivot your left foot back, and the person falls in that direction. I said, but you don't have to go in that direction. You can step forward with the hand throw. You can step forward to your left with the hand throw. You can go under their arm, and guess what it becomes? A wrist lock takedown. You know, and that to some extent frustrates students, but on the other hand, it opens their eyes that there's not just one way to do a te nagi. You know, there's not just one way to do a hip throw. There's not just one way to stick a finger up a person's nose. I mean, we used to a lot of these really crude techniques I actually got from Hal Brocious and Kitsugo Jujitsu, not from Seki. But he even taught us how to bite properly. And if you want a good way, Dave has heard this before, but you may not have, Brian. I've done it in the past couple of times at seminars. I'll get a bunch of rolls that are about 8 inches long, about yay round. I don't know, bolilo rolls or whatever they're called. And I know they're all weigh the same, and we have a competition with the students. And what you do is you have one student hold both ends of the roll carefully, and the other student takes as big a bite as possible. And whomever takes, and then you weigh the roll again to see how much less it weighs. And the person that has taken the biggest bite wins the big bite award or whatever. But you can't do this on humans.
Right.
I thought of using, like chicken breasts or stuff like that, but chicken breasts are expensive. Plus you've got bone in the way and all that other stuff. But human bite is a very vicious attack. And,
Oh, yeah.
And his attitude is you don't just bite the person, you grab on like a pit bull. You bite and start turning your head, et cetera, and it
Tear and nosh. Yeah.
Pardon me?
Tear and nosh.
Tear and nosh. And it becomes a very, very serious injury. Plus,
Yeah.
You have to get a tetanus shot.
Well, to your point, if it gets you the hell out of there,
yeah, yes,
it gets you safe so you can get up and run. Absolutely. Whatever,
right.
Like you said, tearing an ear. You tear somebody's ear, there's a ton of nerves there, man. They're going to be freaking out. That gives you a chance to get the hell out.
Right.
So,
and
guys, I've got to wrap it up, unfortunately. Okay. I apologize because I'm enjoying this so much.
Come back in 2 weeks or do this again.
I will.
Yeah.
I will. And Dave, good to see you.
Likewise,
Thank you.
Enjoyed it. Thank you.
This has been my pleasure, and I'll see you guys very soon. And thank you both teachers, and I'll look forward to next meeting.
Very good.
Okay. Take care, Brian.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
And then there were two.
And there were the two of us. Do we want to continue, or do we want to make it a short Zoom meeting today?
We can freak everybody out when they go to watch it and find out that it's just a brief one.
Right. Well, it's good to have a short one once in a while. Anyway, just to bring you up to speed as to what happened with the dojo, and let me just cut the recording here.